Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, have we understated the impact of Taj Brooks' absence on Saturday in Pullman, and a mean green view on North Texas and Tech through the first couple of weeks of the season? We're into it next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On at Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks as always for making us your first listen. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet only $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you, and just a couple of days away from the Red Raiders returning to Jones Stadium, where they will face the Mean Green of North Texas, led by a familiar face to Red Raider fans, a familiar face, familiar name to West Texans in general, that being one Eric Morris. We will hear from Coach Morris coming up on today's program. Want to get some thoughts on his time in West Texas and some of the memories he still carries, of course, and also like to get an opposing view on what he's seen on film from the Red Raiders. So we will get to that coming up in just a moment, but also want to get to some thoughts from Texas Tech running backs coach and special teams coordinator Kenny Perry. We will stick to the running backs portion of his duties on today's program, but obviously that one of the bigger storylines this week as we look forward to ball game number 3, whether or not number 28, Taj Brooks, the Brahma Bull of the 806, will be back on the field for the Red Raiders. He was not there, obviously, in Pullman, Washington against the Cougars. And I'm kind of wondering if maybe we have undervalued or understated the impact of his absence on Saturday night. I want to get your thoughts on that coming up. But first, let's take a listen to Kenny Perry talking about Brooks not being in the mix last weekend.
I think it hurt just from the comfort standpoint, you know. When the Bulls didn't have Michael Jordan, they weren't very good neither. We didn't have Taj Brooks. I think it's a comfort. I think, you know, I can't speak for it, but I'm sure Barron can tell you that there's times where he feels comfortable turning and handing the ball to Taj Brooks. I think our offensive line blocks better when Taj is there just because he makes guys miss. Everything just looks better. I mean, that's part of it when you got a player like him. So did it affect us? Yeah, but can we use that as an excuse? Nope, and I'm not going to use that as an excuse. I mean, we're expected to win games. Y'all know that. I mean, it's just the nature of this business. If not, you're going to be sitting up here, you know, in time asking somebody else these questions, and I get that. That's why, I mean, I'm not going to shy away from nothing. We got to win the game. There's no way around that.
So obviously the coaches can't necessarily focus in on it as an excuse. Podcast host, maybe a little more leeway. But I'm kind of curious. I feel like maybe myself as a fan have been sort of undervaluing the impact of his absence, if that's even possible for arguably the best player on your team. But I don't know, maybe I go into the game kind of thinking, all right, well, your ground game is going to suffer, obviously, without him out there. But I don't know if I was considering enough how that impacts everything else, passing game, offense in general, how that impacts the team at large, and obviously impacting the game. So maybe it's worth a little bit more time.
You know what makes me feel really old is I was there when Kenny said this, Coach Perry, who's the associate head coach and running backs coach, special teams coordinator, all that stuff. And when he made the comment about Michael Jordan, I looked around and I thought, you know what? Most of these people in here never saw Mike play, man. They're like, you know, I mean, I'm obviously people know who this is, but it's like that you know, reference was probably lost on a lot of those folks.
They're saying, "Oh, you mean Larsa Pippen's father-in-law?" Yeah, I didn't think about that, Chris.
This is why you're really good at what you do right here. I mean, it's just I bow down to the greatness of my awesome co-host here. I don't know, because part of me says there's two ways to look at this, and I don't know, and I don't want to sit on the fence here, so I'm going to take a stand when we talk through both sides. But part of me says, yeah, I mean, you probably don't realize all the things that he can do for you, and it's the intangibles, and it's not just the rushing yards. It's really all the other stuff. And at some point, does it give you everybody extra confidence? Do you feel just, the whole security blanket thing? And then you can get into pass pro, and am I going to call the game differently, whether I'm Zach or whether I'm Barron, knowing that he's either there or not there? And am I going to check to this or stay in this, knowing he's not back there? And we have no way of knowing how that played out. Okay, so there's that side of it. Then the flip side is, I just can't believe that you would be mentally fragile enough to where that it would just all kind of crumble, or things would just, when he wasn't there. I just refuse to believe you couldn't have figured out a different way. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I think that played a part but you just we can't look at it like that. You or I can, I guess, if we wanted to, but I refuse to kind of offer that up as like, man, I mean, whereas I really feel like when last year and some of the previous years, when you've had a QB issue, whether it be hampered or not there, I think sometimes people weren't even looking at that as enough of an excuse. It's just really difficult to win without a QB. And you had your chances, and you had capable backups. They're not Taj Brooks, or as KP called them, kind of put them in the Jordan category. They're not. But I thought they were capable. And now we turn to, what are we going to get this Saturday? Do you get him back in there? Is it him not in there, or is it him in there, and then is it him in there on a pitch count? Is it like, what level are we getting? Don't know. But I just, because I'll tell you, one of the other things that I was disappointed with in the run game is that I really want people to see what Jacoby Williams can do. I mean, he's very different from everybody else in that group, and smaller, mind you. But it just didn't work out to where you couldn't get him in the game. And
yeah, he didn't take a snap, did he? I don't think we saw him at all.
Don't believe so. I would anticipate, though, that is coming soon. He's going to get in his 4 games at least, and then maintain his redshirt year. But who's to say that he doesn't get more of that? Because I just think he offers up something that you don't really have. But again, he's 190. And he's a freshman, so I always want all these freshmen to play, and then you get in there, and it's like that's when the freak out, or Cameron Dickey misses a block. But this is part of the freshman. This is why coaches typically play older players, and why you're having issues on defense too, because they're young and inexperienced and all that. So yeah, I can't always get what I want, but you and I, as podcast hosts, we can sit here until we get replaced, like Kenny said. What would happen in time if we don't win the game or win the show, as we as we're trying to do here.
So how are you feeling about the likelihood of Brooks to be in the game at all versus, I guess, kind of the snap count factor? And I'm kind of curious what your answer would be as it relates to like being withheld as a precaution versus like he absolutely can't go. First, today's episode brought to you by Factor. Fuel up this summer with Factor's no prep, no mess meals, and meet all of your wellness goals thanks to the menu of chef-crafted options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, even Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in only 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. What are you waiting for? Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you're going to always have new flavors to explore. From breakfast to dessert, you can stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. So go ahead and treat yourself to restaurant quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, blackened salmon, and much, much more, all while keeping kitchen time to a minimum, since Factor meals are ready in only 2 minutes. No shopping, prepping, cooking, or cleaning up. So head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 and use our code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE50 at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50. for 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active with Factor. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, and America's #1 sportsbook is shaking it up to kick off football season with an offer a football fan can't afford to miss. Right now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. And, of course, you can cancel at any time. Again, from right now through September 22nd, bet $5 and take advantage of a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to download America's #1 sportsbook. So how are you feeling about the likelihood of Brooks to be in the game at all versus, I guess, kind of the snap count factor? And I'm kind of curious what your answer would be as it relates to like being withheld as a precaution versus like he absolutely can't go, because we don't see like we don't see a splint, we don't see a sling, we don't see a cast, we don't see a brace on him there on the sideline. And I guess maybe an easier way to think about that is if Oklahoma State is in town, was Taj Brooks playing in that game? Was there some fear about like, hey, we don't want to compound something, second game of the season by keeping him in there? Does that make sense? I just kind of wonder where sort of the grade of his injury was, or maybe how you would describe the reasoning why he was actually held out.
You use the word compound. You ever seen a compound fracture in real life before?
I have not. Thank God. I don't wish to.
Yeah, it's I have a weak stomach with all that, it is not. It's like the Joe Theismann thing.
Yes.
Google it. Speaking of older references, that some in the audience will be like, "Who's Joe Theismann?" Yeah.
Willis McGahee.
Yes.
I mean, that's 20 years ago, but a little more recent.
to your point, there is no visible issue that we can tell with Taj Brooks. He was there on the sideline in Pullman and cheering on his teammates and seemingly in good spirits. Actually went through some early portions of the warm-up with the team, to which you're kind of like, okay, maybe, maybe he'll give it a whirl. But and without knowing the injury, you don't know the game you're playing on. Okay, what's timetable? What are we looking at? Do we chance it? Do we risk anything? I mean, that's where the tech doctors and Taj, and you have to do what's best for him and then the future and do what's best for the team. All those things have to factor in. But I that's why, based on what we can visibly see, I'll be shocked if it's not either this week or next week. Unless there's a setback that changes everything. But I mean, I think you're looking at him playing versus North Texas, or if not, for sure against Arizona State.
Has he been practicing or limited practice, or do you know what's going on during the week?
Obviously not last week, but this week, and that maybe that's something that we can get into with Coach McGuire tonight on his show, and see if there's any kind of thing to glean there from Coach McGuire. I believe Clay McGuire, no relation, and then Caleb Rogers. So maybe one of those guys will go, yeah, Taj's been out there all week. To which you go, okay, or maybe they go, hey man, I can't. I don't really want to. I'm not showing you my cards here. I don't know,
Right,
so
right.
But people from the audience ask questions and all those things, and Joey's been pretty transparent. So maybe we get an update there.
Well, it did seem like the context sort of was, though, like, man, we don't want to risk making this worse. Is that fair to say? Because I mean, it sort of seems like if the dude can't play, usually there's something very visible, or we kind of have a feel for a timeline or whatever. And
it may be just extra time to let's be sure that we're good to go. And I don't want to say he's different than other folks on your team, but he's different than your other folks. Like you, right?
Yeah.
You've got, with whatever is ailing his arm, you've also got to factor in he's got a potential professional career that you're trying to, so there's a different layer of decision making as it would relate to somebody like him, or some of these guys that are in that boat, like Tyree Wilson, a few years ago. I mean, there's just some different layers of questions, and you need to ask. So, but
Sure.
I do think you'll see him in one of these next 2 home games. And I will say this too. I think if you see him, based on the conversation we just had, I think you see him. Like, and what I mean by that is, I think he's like, I don't think you dip your toe in the water and say, yeah, we're just kind of have him back here and we're going to really limit him. No, I think if he can play, he plays.
Gotcha.
And all that entails. Now, if the score gets one way, then maybe you go, okay, let's let somebody else give a turn at it if you're way up, hopefully, and not way down. But yeah, so I'll just offer that up to my opinion. But that's what I would think, because otherwise, why are you putting him in there? So I think if he's in uniform and he's playing, I think you get the full go.
All right, let's turn our attention to the green that is looking to be mean as they hit the 806 coming up this weekend. It is North Texas Saturday morning from Jones Stadium that will be on the eastern sideline, led by a familiar face, familiar name in Eric Morris, who is their head coach. And Coach Morris was asked this week about his time spent in the 806 and some memories he still carries from his time as a Red Raider.
The cool thing about growing up in West Texas is I think people stick together out there. And I think that, growing out there shaped me, just kind of as an underdog mentality, bring some toughness each and every day. I'm a small guy, chip on my shoulder type of guy. And so I think that's how I approach work day in, day out. And I don't think it's just West Texas. I think probably my family, my father being a coach, and instilling discipline in me from an early age, and the right from wrong, and all those little things also played into the way that I was raised. But yeah, I think first and foremost, I think the people is what makes West Texas special. I do have good memories there, both as a player and as a coach, and I'm from right around the corner there. My firstborn child was born there, so there's memories that come back when I walk in that stadium. But once the ball's kicked off, like, this is all about ball, and this is a really well-coached ball club that, I know a ton of these guys on their staff as well. Joey McGuire is a great friend of mine. Their O-line coach, Clay McGuire, great friend of mine. Antonio Huffman, great friend of mine. Justin Johnson, receivers coach. I actually coached him at University of Houston. So just a ton of familiarity. Zach Kitley was actually my GA there at Texas Tech. And so, I think as competitors, it's always, something that those are guys that I always respect, but just like they're going to go out and try to beat the dog out of us, this will be competition once the ball's kicked off, and look forward to our guys competing against them.
Certainly a fan favorite from his time as a Red Raider, Chris. And once again, man, three straight weeks now, we're talking about familiarity between the two sidelines, right?
It's got to be, first of all, Eric doing a lot better job than Hector Elizondo did in the movie Necessary Roughness, which took place on the campus of, I think they called them Texas State in the movie, but they wore the green and they were the armadillos.
The armadillos.
It was really the mean green.
Man, if his kicker looks like Kathy Ireland, I ain't leaving during a special teams play. I'm
telling you, man. I'm telling you, and I think they probably have a better tight end than Sinbad was as well. I love Eric. I see his dad all the time. His dad, Ray Morris. I see his brother Aaron a lot. But yeah, pride of shallow water. And Eric was one of those guys that I probably don't have this story totally correct, but I feel confident enough that most of this is accurate. But he just wasn't going to take no for an answer on working his way into a college scholarship and wanting to play college football. It's like, I'm just going to show up at the building unannounced, and I'm going to just be here, and I'm going to force you to keep me. But you're talking about somebody that when he was a junior and senior, I think he had like 150 receptions total in those 2 years, and like 18 to 20 touchdown receptions for his career. Had some big plays, and just I think knows so many of the people that are here now that have ties to that era. And it's been fun to watch Eric go from Incarnate Word, and now he's obviously at North Texas, and he's had some time at Washington State, just all the same places that we've been kind of talking about. But yeah, there can't be 3 more non-conference opponents that have more connections with the past or with the school than what you've got here, whether it's players, coaches, or both. And it's almost annoying. And I don't think this has worked in Texas Tech's favor in any of the previous 2 instances. And I hope that it's not, because, man, you think Eric will be as motivated as ever to come in and beat his alma mater. I mean, that's, that's what that would make a career, and he wouldn't be at North Texas for long. You start putting it together, because they're 2-0 for the first time. I want to say in 20 plus years.
Really? Just 2-0. Wow.
Yeah. Because typically they bite off a lot in the non-conference schedule, and they go play at Arkansas or go play at whatever. And so, you're not, and this is their one here. I mean, South Alabama and SFA, and now it's Texas Tech. So, but if they get to 3-0, but the Red Raiders just cannot allow that to happen.
We'll still maintain that he was a better basketball player than he ever was a football player. If he just had a little height, everybody else would have seen that on the college level, I'm sure. But yeah, it turned out to be a really effective weapon for Mike Leach in his offense. And I'm thinking, as you mentioned, Texas State and necessary roughness, what a tale of fantasy to have a 38-year-old quarterback playing college football. Then, not so much now anymore, right? It was ahead of its time, man. Like Scott Bakula would be young in today's age range. How old is Alan Bowman?
and the fight at Billy Bob's. Oh yeah, that's an all-timer. I've been to, grew up in Fort Worth, been to Billy Bob's many times, but I would have loved to have seen a brawl in person like that with the mechanical bull and just the haymakers with the pitchers of beer and just with the Texas
Colts, right? I think even in the land of Hollywood, the University of Texas, still a bunch of Richards, bunch of jerks.
Yeah, that's right. Also, correction. 2-0 for the first time since 2018. Okay. And one of a few 2-0 starts since 1969. So there hadn't been that many of them, but I wanted to make sure I clarified. And the Texas Colts were like
not nice guys.
Boom. Yeah. You can stick it where the sun don't shine, gentlemen. And I'm glad that the Armadillos one-upped you on that particular night.
Classic flick, man.
And the freaking superintendent, principal, head of dean guy has to show up and try to ruin everything and
always
be a fun sucker. Yeah, I mean, screw you, man.
I bet Lawrence Skubanek hates that movie. All university presidents probably hate that movie.
I actually would guess that Lawrence Skubanek would love that movie. And shout out to Patty Skubanek, who watches this show every single day. So, yeah, Mrs. President,
thank you, Patty.
You are one of us. Guns up, and we know. And thinking about your husband, man, as he recovers from a broken rib.
That's true. Rib
after the previous health episode he had back in the summer. So we love the Skubaneks here on Locked On Texas Tech.
Yeah, we do have a president that was willing to pet a possum. So I guess that's a little bit different than what was going on in that movie or some others. All right, let's wrap up the conversation today, Chris, with some more thoughts from Eric Morris. I always like to hear from an opposing coach on what they're seeing from the Red Raiders as they have gotten ready and been preparing and watching Tech on film. Kind of nice to get a different set of eyes, I guess, on it, just to hear some different things. But Coach Morris will first start out discussing what he's seen from his team through the first couple of weeks and then pivot to what he's seeing on film in red and black. First, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And they're not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which make it the best place to find the right hire. Gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive for you. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates to choose from. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within only 24 hours. That's lightning fast. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier as well. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker, plus more effective. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today. Terms and conditions apply. Coach Morris will first start out discussing what he's seen from his team through the first couple of weeks and then pivot to what he's seeing on film in red and black.
I didn't think we were very good communication in pass pro at all. I mean, there was a couple times where we had some guys running wide open and some, first and second reads that Chandler shown that to really take advantage of that stuff. And just based off our busting up front and not communicating, caused them to have a free rusher, a couple times when they're only bringing 4 guys. And so communication is something that's got to get better. Pass pros got to get better. I liked where we moved in the second half as far as running the football. And then I think on the defensive side of the ball, you look at us being able to effectively stop the run. I mean, I think they averaged 2.2 yards per carry, which was huge for us. I thought it was the most physical we've played on defense since I've been here. And so that's something we got to build on that. Like it showed like that's something that worked for us. Like let's continue to build on now too, understanding like these guys are going to look a little bit different than Texas Tech. I mean, I think they have some elite skill guys on the offensive side of the ball. I think their offensive line is going to be bigger and stronger than what we're used to facing and going against the first couple weeks. And so for us to hone into those details and be in the right time at the right spot, the right moment are going to be, even heightened in this game because this is a team that, especially with Taj Brooks back there, I mean, when you bust a gap, I mean, he'll take it the distance and make you pay. I mean, he's as hard to tackle in space as any big back I've seen in recent memory. And Coy Eakin, I mean, big, strong, great ball skills. A kid I recruited at Washington State, thought we were going to get him, and Texas Tech offered him late. Just tough kid from Stephenville, right? Josh Kelly, a transfer that came over from Washington State that had a great year. He started off the season strong so far. They want to get the ball in his hands right now. And then they got these huge, massive tight ends, right? And you just keep going down the list, and there's like 5 of them, all big guys. And so I think they want to find matchup issues with those big guys. And so, I think the Connors kid, is a great football player. The Thorpe kid's a big, long, I mean, they list him at 6'8" or something. But, is a huge red zone target for him. And so now I think this quarterback, he can make all the throws now. And so he's a kid that has shown into. I thought last game, it was just I've coached in Pullman. I know, like, Pullman night games are just where weird things always happen. And so you watch that game, and so, just a bunch of it doesn't make sense early in the game, where I think Washington State kind of capitalized on some of their mistakes early in that game, as opposed, like, defensively, I thought Texas Tech played great in the first half, and really, I thought they defended the pass extremely well the whole entire game. I think John Mateer just kind of did a good job in some of the quarterback run game, and actually, there's one play where But they had guys in position to make some tackles, and Mateer played a great game, was able to bust out. So I think, really if you took the quarterback run game away from what they did in this game, I think, and then just turnovers, right? I think the turnovers hurt them. And we experienced it ourselves last week, right? I mean, we had 4 turnovers ourselves, and so we got to worry about, obviously ourselves and protecting the football in this game.
Was interested to hear him mention several Red Raiders there, and of course also interested to hear him mention, and he spoke about this in an answer that we didn't play for you as well, but some challenges in establishing some continuity and chemistry along their offensive line, and struggling sometimes with maybe just a 4-man rush in some previous weeks. So I don't know, maybe there's something to find there for Texas Tech.
Yeah, their offensive line, because I think Chandler Morris had 3 picks last week versus SFA, and I think he felt, sped up and all that. That should sound familiar based on what we've been talking about with Barron and everything from last week. This offensive line for North Texas, they've got 45 career starts amongst the group, but 27 of those come from their center. So you look at the guards and tackles, it's just really a handful of starts is what it is. And then obviously the right side of the line is Larry Moore and Landon Peterson is what we expect. And those are ex-Texas Tech players. And they didn't play a whole lot here and are just now kind of getting into it there. So maybe there's some things that some games you can play with your defensive line and all those things. And, his his defensive coordinator, talking about Eric's there at North Texas, he's from the Iowa State tree, from John Heacock and all those things. And I think it's interesting because Eric mentioned all the tight ends. That's the one answer that offenses typically have when you start playing the 3 high safety, which is that we're going to play everybody back and keep everything in front. Because when you start getting into 12 and 13 personnel or even 22 personnel, which is 2 backs, 2 tight ends, all those kinds of things, it brings those players that are far back there it brings them closer to. And that's what kind of happened in the very first game of the year defensively. And that's where you got the shots, some of the shots down the field and everything like that. So we'll see kind of the chess match here. But it was interesting because I think Eric, fortunate to turn it over like they did last week and still win, and knows that you can't do that because, boy, that's when but it's also a sign of a pretty good team when you show up and you don't play very well and you still figure it out and win by 15 points, which they did at home versus SFA last weekend. So, I mean, I'd love to turn it over 4 times and still win, but that's not the fate that we had in Pullman. So, but yeah, Eric, very familiar with a lot of your staff and a lot of this roster, just being where he's been, and then so many of the relationships that have crossed over. And heck, he's talking like Taj Brooks will in fact play. So you know what? I'll just take his word for it. Maybe he's talked to somebody up here.
Speak it into existence, Eric. Speak it into existence.
That's right. He knows about everybody up here anyway. So
that's interesting. So maybe there's a bite to chew on there from the tight ends more so this week, or a little opportunity. I hadn't really considered that given what they were going to do defensively.
Unless they change it, and it doesn't mean that you'll feature them, but it makes them have to respect it, and maybe that creates an opportunity, elsewhere. But that's kind of and we'll see kind of what I think the last name is Coach Capone. I think is his last name. He was corners coach under Heacock there in Ames for 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever it is, and he's been there because this is just Eric's just in his 2nd season there.
Yeah.
So this is all still relatively new there in Denton for Coach Morris and his group and all that. And but we'll kind of see what we get there. But that's the game within the game, if you will. But I definitely think they are probably concerned about their offensive line is maybe because they've got really good skill and have made some plays. But I mean, aren't you kind of wondering what kind of group you've got on the defensive line just in total?
Oh, yeah.
Because the first game, it was just like, man, there's just nothing there. The second game, I thought it was pretty good. Now, the one problem, though, is that maybe they were too aggressive and you over pursued, and then, okay, here he goes. Because, see, Chandler Morris can do the same thing Mateer can. I don't know if he's quite the athlete, but it's similar. He will tuck it and go and make you look silly, and you just can't win a game given 200 yards to the QB on the ground.
No. And, like he said, for a portion of the game, was really liking what you were seeing defensively, at least within the context of what you saw in the first week. But then, all hell broke loose. So hopefully hell is caged up here in week number 3 as Texas Tech returns to Jones Stadium. All right, we'll be visiting with you one more time this week to wrap up the week before we get to the weekend. It'll be on the other side of Chris's visit with Joey McGuire and company. So we'll have some thoughts on that conversation next time around. Hope to see you then. Chris, appreciate your time as always, man. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, sounds good. Hopefully I'll see some of you maybe at Rudy's tonight for the Coach McGuire show. And if not, we'll talk to you down the road, and we'll see you to Stadium on Saturday. But more importantly, we'll talk to you in this space Friday morning. How about that?
That's right. There you go. Book it, baby. He's Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. Appreciate you guys being out there. Make sure you get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And a big shout out, as always, to those everydayers mixing it up in the YouTube comments. You've been extra busy this week, and we appreciate it. So keep them coming. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.